Joining me to kick off today's show is a man that holds a 10-1-1 record with 8 KOs. He goes by the nickname Big Steppa. That's Khalil Coe. Khalil, appreciate you taking time to come on today, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, first things first, man. We're a couple of weeks removed now from probably your biggest fight of your entire career. You get your get back against Manuel. Can you take us through just your thoughts now as you've been able to reflect on that fight? Where do you think about that fight a few weeks out now?
Um, it's something I should have done the first time, but I didn't have the strength to get the job done or finish it, you know what I mean? But I made sure going into camp the second time that we were 100% in shape and then ready. And we stuck to the game plan and got them out of there.
I want to get into that fight, but I do want to give the whole story because obviously the past 6 months or so has been a little bit wild for yourself. And if we go back to the very first one, now you can kind of tell your story. And that's actually what I want to ask you about. But I know you were hospitalized 2 times prior to that fight. One as recently as about a couple days, a couple of weeks, about 1 week removed from the fight. Can you just take us through everything that was going on leading up to the very first fight?
I was training, and like it would happen, like my body would like it would lock up and tense up, you know what I
Mm,
mean? Uh like from dehydration, they would say is yeah. You know what I mean? I went to the hospital, they gave me fluids the first time, and I went back to the gym and was training. And a couple weeks later, I say like a week before the fight, I had to get into a what do you call it, a ambulance from the
right.
gym, took me directly to the hospital. I had to stay overnight. I had a kidney infection due to the illness, rhabdo. So I had to flush out my kidneys overnight, and yeah, it was a big, headache. I was thinking about it throughout the camp and during the fight.
When you're going through all this, training camp in and of itself is difficult. And then you talk about adding in all these other outside circumstances, and yet you still step foot in that ring, still decide to go out there and fight. Why were you so confident in yourself? Why did you say, you know what, even with all these outside circumstances, I'm gonna make sure I go out there and still put on a fight?
Because it's like I know what I'm capable of. I'm gonna, regardless of what, I'm gonna give my all. I'm
Right.
not never gonna just, I don't want to fight. I don't want to, I want to put on the show for the fans. Give them something. Even the first fight, a lot of people say it was one of the most exciting fights they've seen. You
Fair
know what
enough.
I mean? And that's what I'm here to do.
Going through your mind at that point in time, did it ever cross your mind? Did you ever consider stepping out of the fight, or were you all the way, all throughout it all, were you locked in saying, I'm gonna go out there and make that fight happen?
No, I was locked in the whole time.
All right.
I was locked in. It was people telling me, "Oh, you don't have to take the fight because we were supposed to meet before." You know what I mean? And he had postponed the fight due to like a toothache or something like that.
Mhm.
So it was just like, you know what, why keep postponing it? Let's just make it happen. Let's just do it.
You stepped foot in that ring that night. Obviously, didn't go exactly according to plan. Obviously, get dropped 4 times and you end up getting KO'd. If you were healthy heading up to that, if you didn't have all those different circumstances leading up to that fight, does that first fight go differently?
Absolutely. You seen what happened the second fight
Yeah.
easily. I didn't even dig into my bag, honestly.
Mhm.
It was just easy. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. As you
Right.
see, the rounds progressed. I started to let my right hand go. I just started to get comfortable,
Yeah.
and it would have got worse. You know what I mean? They stopped the fight. That was one of the best decisions they could have made.
Looking back at it, that second performance was masterful. There were some sequences that were beautiful that you did on your part out there. And I just want to ask, I mean, obviously there's a clear difference between the first outing and the second one. What percentage do you feel like you even were of yourself in that first one?
I would say about 30 to 40%.
Yeah. When you go through that situation, you step in that ring, what was just going through your mind as you're trying to go out there, still put on a show, and obviously you have all these circumstances going on, you're 30% of yourself. How are you able to have the mentality to say, you know what, I'm going to keep going forward with this?
Because it's like we put in all this work in training camp, all the sacrifices we made. It's like
Mm.
you don't want to go in vain. You want to go out there and you want to perform. People are paying for tickets to come see you personally. You know what I mean? And then now all of a sudden you can't fight. So
I would, or you can go, my bad.
like you just don't want to let the people down. You don't want your friends, your family, your fans. You don't want to
Mm.
let them down.
I have a ton of respect for what you just said there because I feel like for some boxers, it's not the same mentality. Some guys, either it's going to be for some reason, they don't have the mental toughness to go out there and fight in those type of situations. But some guys don't have the exact embrace or really charismatic caring for their fan base that you just talked about. Has that always been a part of you? Has that been ingrained in you? Did you develop that longer or kind of throughout your duration of your career? When did that come to be?
There wouldn't be any me without my fans. You know what I mean? That's who come to see me, who support me, who like my videos, who comment. Those are the guys. Those are the people who push me and give me that drive. You know what I mean?
So would you say inside you kind of always have an embrace for your fan base? That's something that's always going to push you forward to go out there and step out and show out for your fans then?
Yeah, absolutely. Like even honestly, when I went to Mexico, I wasn't even expecting the amount of love that I got while I was out there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like there was a lot of embracing. And they kind of booed me after, but overall, it was a positive. It was a positive effect, a positive outcome.
Well, let's hop into getting ready for your second fight. Obviously, things don't go according to plan in the first fight. You have to get yourself healthy. And that was all the way back, last year, November 9th of last year. Then you go out there and we know the performance you end up having later on. But when you're going through this training camp, what's in your mindset? Are you 100% healthy at that point? Just what was the second training camp like now for fight number two?
Yeah, it was just more so me being, healthy. I
Right,
train hard every camp. It doesn't matter who I'm fighting. I train hard because you never know what they're capable of.
right.
But it's just like I said, more so me being healthy, taking those rest days that I need to for my body to recover and heal, and that was the major point, the major difference.
I want to ask you a little bit more about that. You talked about the fact that you train really hard. Now you incorporate a little bit more rest into your schedule, kind of getting yourself more healthy, allowing your body to recover. Was that something that you realized? Did you bring someone else in part of your camp? I know you added somebody, I believe, for that second camp too into your team, but was that kind of from his influence or what brought that new mentality and approach to the
No,
fight?
honestly, it was from when the visits to the hospital. The
Okay.
doctors told me like, oh, you can't overtrain. You know what I mean? That's
Mm,
the second visit to the hospital. They told me that's when they diagnosed me with rhabdo. The first
right.
time they just gave me some IV fluids and told me to. But when I came back the second time, that's when the doctor diagnosed me with rhabdo, and that's when he
Gotcha.
explained to me how to avoid it and how does it happen and what the causes and effects of it. And that's what we came up with in camp. We learned that you gotta rest the body. You have to rest the
Mm.
body.
What percentage of yourself would you say you felt in the second fight?
1,000, and I didn't
Right.
even really get to like do everything I wanted to do. You know what I
Mm,
mean? It was just like it was simple, but I felt good. I knew leading up to this fight, even in the back when I was warming up, I told my coaches, I said, I feel real good. I feel
mm.
real good. You know
Okay.
what I mean? And it showed. When I got to the ring, I felt good. I felt relaxed. Even with some shots he touched me with, he bounced off, rolled off, and just kept going.
I want to ask about the mental standpoint leading to the second fight. Obviously, you're coming off your very first career loss, your first loss in a very, very long time. And obviously, there was a little bit of pressure in a sense, I have to imagine. Going out to his home in Guadalajara, in Mexico, was there pressure? Was there a sense of wanting revenge in your back of your mind? Or were you calm, cool, and collected mental wise? Or how was just the mental process throughout the past few months leading up to the fight?
I think this was the only fight my professional career that I had never been. I wasn't nervous.
Okay.
Before all of my fights, I was nervous. Like, not, I was, yeah, nervous. Yeah, it's nervousness. You know what I mean? But this fight, I was confident. I was real confident because I've
Mm.
been in there with him before, and I know what I'm capable of. You know what I mean? And I know that I wasn't 100%. So going into this fight, I was excited, man. I was excited. I was confident, and I was ready.
Let's get into that fight then. And like I said, in my opinion, that was probably your career best performance, especially when you talk about the stakes involved, especially considering everything going on. When you look back on that fight, do you feel like you accomplished everything you wanted to? Was that 100% a successful night for yourself?
Absolutely. I feel like the fact that he quit in the corner and on the stool
Mm,
made it all that more,
yeah.
spectacular. I went to Mexico, and that's not something that happens. When you're dealing with Mexican fighters, they're really prideful. They want to go out on their shield. You have to,
Yeah.
but in order, like, there's you don't really see that often. You know what I mean? Let alone go to Mexico
Mm,
and after being stopped by the guy. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So it was definitely it was a big deal.
Is that your favorite fight of your entire career to this point?
Um, yeah, yeah, I would say yeah, actually,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I also have to ask about the environment. Obviously, Guadalajara, Mexico, they have a very unique fan base out there. Like you said, it's a very passionate fan base. They're going to rally behind their fighters, especially. But getting to fight out there, what was that experience like?
It was one of a kind, you know, because I had never been to Mexico before, you know, so
Okay.
I was more so like just taking in the experience, the culture, the food, you know, the different things. On
Mm,
top of the fact that I had a fight at the end of the week, you
right.
know, I was talking to people and we were like, you know, conversing. And they were like, "Oh, you fight?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have a fight at the end of the week." They're like, "Really? Like fight?" Like I'm like, "Yeah, I have a fight."
That's awesome. Now, I also have to ask this other standpoint then. When you have that victory, he stops in the corner. You know that you've obviously won this fight. You've got your revenge. You've redeemed your one loss. How much more sweet did that make that victory for yourself?
Um, Usually, you know, it takes some time to afford to kick in, but with that immediately, you know what I mean? The moment that I seen them wave it off in the corner, I'm like, I did it, you know.
Right.
We say we got it back in blood, you know. Um, it felt amazing, man. The fact that I could prove to the world that it was actually a fluke, you know. Some guys don't come back from things like that, you
Right.
know. And the fact that I was able to even rematch him and get the my belt back, because he could have fought someone else and lost the belt, then it would have just been all, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was just it came together the way it was planned, and it was great. It was great.
Curious, would you ever consider a trilogy with him? Obviously, it's R1-1. There was a lot of obviously reasons that you lost the first fight we discussed, but is there ever a possibility we could see you guys in a trilogy?
I have no problem with it. I have
Okay.
no problem with it. I don't think that he wants to do that, but
All right.
I have no problem with it. If and it has to make sense, you know. I'm going forward. If it makes sense, then yes.
Okay. Well, Khalil, I want people to get to know your story a little bit more because obviously you have a very unique journey to get to this point. I want people to get to know how you become the guy that you are today. And so, for starters, growing up out there in New Jersey, I know you learned to fight at a very young age. When did you really make the decision that boxing is what you wanted to pursue?
Like I was about 18 when because I was training since I was about I say 13. I was always in and out of the gym, but I never had a fight, you know. So when I was about
Okay.
18, 17, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just do it, you know.
Mhm.
I got in the gym, they was like, oh, you're pretty good. Pretty good. You got a nice jab, you got a nice, you know, fundamentals. And from there we just been going. You know, I was kind of late in my career compared to the others, you know, and I was going to nationals and things. I had like 12 fights. Everybody had like 80 and 100 fights,
Yeah.
but it worked out for me.
When you talk about making up time, how are you able to do that? Because so many guys, obviously, you said, have been in the sport from the time they're really young, fighting at amateur ranks and so on and so forth. How did you, in a sense, make up so much time and make up for that gap?
I feel like it's more so how bad you want it. You know, a lot of people ask me, "Oh, you think it's too late for me to start training or boxing?" I'm like, if you want it as bad as you think you want it, you can do it. You know what I mean? There's a
Mm,
lot of fighters that started late
yep.
and became legends. Bernard Hopkins, you know what I mean?
Yep.
He started late. You know, look his name is a household name. It's all
Yep.
about how bad you want it. You know, I wanted it bad. You know what I mean? I wanted it real bad.
So, what was the turning point for yourself? Because, as you said, you kind of were in and out of the gym from a large portion of your early childhood life. Then you make that flip, kind of flip the switch for yourself. Why? What was it about boxing that said, you know what, I want to go all in on this sport?
It just more so like I gotta take it serious. You know, I wanted to take something serious and and, and complete it. You know, a lot of things we
Mm,
try things, we quit, try something else. I wanted to stick to it.
okay. When you were growing up, were there other sports you like pursuing, or was it pretty much just in and out of different multiple sports? So, what was that like for yourself?
No, well, I played football, I played basketball.
Okay.
I pretty much played whatever I wanted, you know what I mean? But um I say football was probably my first love.
Gotcha.
Then I started playing basketball, and then boxing happened.
So what was the separating point between boxing and those sports? Why'd you like that sport more than the other two?
Because it was more so like when I went to spar, I would get beat up, and then I was like, you know what? Tomorrow I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna
Okay.
beat him up,
All
So
right.
it more so came a like a revenge, and then it came a habit.
Mm.
Now I'm in the gym every day. Now I'm boxing.
All right. Well, let's hop into the amateur career because you had a very accomplished career, especially considering the fact that you were not a long-term amateur career. One of the biggest moments, though, Chemistry Cup in Germany. You stopped two-time gold medalist Julio Cesar La Cruz, one of the most famous knockdowns and knockouts of your career. Take us through that fight right there with you. That was kind of the moment I feel like a lot of people learned your name. You got put on the map on around the world. What was that moment like for yourself?
That actually was a crazy day. Me and my team, my fellow teammates, we were training for him, for that fight. We weren't expecting it to go that way, but that's what we wanted. You know what I mean?
Mm,
We uh we knew that we couldn't leave it into the judges' hands. It's La Cruz we talking about. You know what I mean?
right.
So when the shot, some people, if you listen to the video, you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And when it happened, it was just crazy. It was like, wow, I really just knocked this guy out. It was crazy.
Was that a moment that you look back and say that was almost a solidifying moment for yourself where you realized you can do this, you can go on to do boxing at the highest of levels? Did that kind of click for yourself earlier on, or was that the turning point? Would you say?
No, I feel like it happened already because there were I had like that was a it was a nice knockout, but honestly, I had way more vicious knockouts leading up to that fight. It only blew up like that because of who he was. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
But I fought a lot of tough guys in that tournament. You know what I mean? And I knew I was ready before I got there. My training partners. I'm training with Jared Anderson, Troy Isley,
Hmm.
Keyshawn, Tiger Johnson. All these guys, we pushing each other. I knew I was ready. You know,
When you talk about just growing up, because you're part of obviously the U.S. national team, and you get to be around all these different guys you just listed to. All these guys have accomplished so many great things in their careers already, still have bright futures. Seeing how all you guys have now panned out the pro ranks, what's it like seeing that?
we were just having a conversation about it. It's crazy how we had conversations back in the day like, yo, when we go pro, we gonna do this, we gonna wear this, and
Mm,
and it's like crazy that it's happening now, you know, and we really spoke this into existence. You know what I mean?
right.
We manifested it and it's here. We really did it. I want to give a shout out to all of them, all the guys who actually stuck to their promise and did what they were supposed to do.
What is it like representing your country? Because you talk about going out on this national stage at such a young age, representing the United States of America. What is that like?
It's dope, honestly.
Yeah.
We built like this brotherhood, this bond. Like even when someone's fighting, you hear us on the sideline, we screaming. Nobody has a voice after. Like
Hmm.
it's personal. Like I could win, but if my teammate don't win, we don't. It doesn't feel the same. You know what I mean? It's just. But when you go out there and you put on with your whole team and you represent for your country,
Right.
it's a big it's a big what you say accomplishment. It's a big
Right.
yeah, definitely.
That is a unique component there because I feel like obviously when you talk about boxing, I know everybody has their teams and whatnot, but it's a little bit different when you actually are truly a part of a team where the team gets an overall total award together as well. What is it like when you do get that? Because it's really boxing is one of the only few combat sports, I should say, is the only like personal sport you really get. I guess tennis as well. But when you do get that team atmosphere, does that make it a little bit different?
Absolutely. It pushes you. It's like, all right, I
Mhm.
know my team waiting on me. After I go, he's gonna go. I have to set the tone to keep it. You know what I mean? All right, that's what we say before we fight. You set the tone, I'm gonna go, and he's gonna finish it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
we live by that. We gotta go in there and we make sure we try to do what we said we was gonna do.
I feel like the only thing I can think of in recent memories, we had that 5-on-5 match room in Queensbury thing last year. When you talk
Hmm.
about that, and obviously I feel that's still a little bit different, but Do you feel like that would be a unique thing where we should see more of those opportunities happen when you almost get to go into an event as a team?
Definitely, I feel like that's it. I feel like it helps the because boxing is a lonely sport. I know we have coaches, we have but at the end of the day, there's only you in the ring. You don't have someone blocking for you. As a for football, I play running back. You don't have someone blocking for you so you can run. It's just
Right.
you and him in there. But to feel the comfort of you knowing that you have a team that's standing with you, it gives you it gives you strength, shall I say.
Hmm. All right. Now, you did end up missing on the Olympic team. I know that's something you probably dreamed and aspired to be a part of. How was that process for you? Was that something that was difficult, or how did you handle that situation?
I look at everything like everything happens for a reason, you know what I mean?
Right.
Uh, who knows where I would have been, Metro signed me, and they just been making it happen, ever since.
Right. Well, obviously, you have a little bit of an issue before you go into your pro jump, and obviously end up serving about 16 months in jail for possession of weapons at that point in time. Can you take us
hmm
through that situation for yourself when you obviously had the aspirations of making a pro jump? All this stuff ends up happening for yourself. How did you handle that portion of your life?
Um, it was hard. It was hard more so mentally because I know where I could have been, instead
Mm,
of where I was, all over of a wrong place, wrong time. You know what
mm,
I mean? And it's like I wish I could go back, but I can't, so I made the best of it. I got, like you said, I wound up serving 18 months. You
okay.
know what I mean? I got stronger mentally, physically, and spiritually. So I knew when I get out, they were gonna feel everything that they took. You know what I mean? And that's what I plan on doing.
I want to ask you this because obviously, when you talk about the situation, you look back at it, you said you would wish you wouldn't have had to go through that, but you did go through it, and obviously, you were able to learn some things. I feel like, what would you say? How did it help you? What's the positive you could look at that? What were some of the benefits that you grew in as a man, as a person, even that impacted your boxing career from that season of life?
It just told me like just to what my mom she said straddle the fence. In this sport you have to be a gym rat, and if you're a gym rat, guess what? You can't be anywhere else to get in trouble. You know what I mean? Or any
Mhm.
situations. If you're a gym rat, you're not doing nothing but training and getting better. You know what I mean? You have no room for anything else. These are the time that we need to lock in and take this serious. You know what I mean? Because nobody wants to get punched in the face and in the head forever. You
Right.
know what I mean? So take advantage of this time, the window that you have, and get the job done, man, and get up out of there.
If I were to know you at that portion of time in your life, and I would have said, "Hey, Khalil, you're going to be a man that's a 10-1 guy, a guy that most people view as a top 25, top 20, possibly in the very near future contending for world championships." Would that have shocked you, or what would your answer have been if I would have told you that?
That was my intention. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I would have known that that was correct. Because
Okay.
I had the same agenda.
So many people in the situation probably would have said they would have been in doubt at that point. Obviously, they don't know what's going to happen. A lot of things are not going according to plan. What kept you confident in that state of life where you said, you know what? I know when I get out, I'm going to go out there and have a great career.
Because it's all up to you. You know what I mean? Like, I know that I'm an exciting fighter. I
Hmm.
know that people want to see me fight. I know that there's a lot of fighters that don't want to fight me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So why wouldn't I be a great? You know what I mean? When I know you have to know your worth and know what you're capable of.
Right.
Some people, what I say, some people might express it differently. But I'm more laid back. I'm chill, but I know what I'm capable of, and I know that these I'm gonna be in these conversations. You know what I mean? I'm gonna be in these conversations. I'm gonna be in these big fights. I'm gonna become a household name.
All right. Well, let's hop into that pro career now. You get into you sign with Matchroom, Eddie Hearn. What led to that contract and just talk about your guys' relationship? What was like building that relationship right at the gate with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom?
There was he reached out to someone that he seen around me. You know what I mean? Alex. You're not sure if you know Hammerhands.
I'm not sure. No, no, no.
Well, his father Alex, he reached
Okay.
out to him, and he contacted me and said Eddie wanted to, sit down and have a conversation, and we set it up, and that's what it was.
Talk about your guys' relationship to this point in time. Obviously, we know he's one of the top renowned promoters in all the world. What has it been like growing that relationship with him?
It's dope. He's one of those guys that you can just DM him. He has no problem with talking to you. He talk to
Mhm.
anything. You know what I mean? A lot of promoters you barely even see. He's more hands on with the
Mhm.
fighters. You build a, you know what I mean? Like you walk through the fight. Oh, hey, listen, come here. He's like, no, you come here. It's just more so you build a personal relationship. You know what I mean? It's like he's a cool dude. He's a cool guy.
You mentioned a key portion then. Obviously, from the outside looking in, I could see that happening because I feel like he does have a close relationship with some guys. But is that something that separates him from other promoters? Like you said, is there not a lot of promoters that are as friendly, as personable, is probably the right word, as Eddie Hearn?
I don't know one.
Okay.
Besides, I would say uh Oscar. You know what I mean? But
Okay.
and I think he just started behaving that way. You know what I mean? But Eddie, he's been that way from the beginning. He's
Mhm.
been that way. He's hands on. He's very verbal. What he feels and what he thinks.
Second fight of your career ends up resulting in a draw to Aaron Casper. Take us to that night.
Eric Casper, that was in New Hampshire. Yep.
Yep.
Uh, Quigley and Andrade. Yep. I fought Eric Casper to a draw. That was like my first time having to like I didn't know anything about rehydrating.
Mm.
I just made weight and I just went into the fight. Like I said, like I'm new to the boxing overall, so
Right.
I was learning on the job. A lot of things I had to learn, but I got it down now, and I'm off. I'm off.
Can you break us down that portion right there? Because I know as boxing fans, we always know about, we discuss the rehydration, weight weigh-ins, all this stuff's a big, big portion of boxing. As a fighter, like you said, you're the one that's actually going through the whole situation. And very tough, obviously going through the weight cuts and so on and so forth. How critical is it to have the right nutritionist, the right team around you throughout that entire week and process getting ready for the fight?
Definitely, a lot of people like to think like, okay, after I make my weight, I'm gonna just go eat anything. You know what I mean? Like, and
Hmm.
that's how I was thinking. But you have to have certain beverages, certain foods that gives you energy. That we just started this. We do like after we do a workout before the fight. After you weigh in.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like you have to shock the body and get it back to, you know what I mean? Get it back to flowing, get the blood
Mm.
flowing, get the muscles, because when you drain, you can't do anything. You know what I mean. But like I said, you gotta take the right proteins, the right protein drinks, the food all the way. Like it's like a car. You have to put the right gas in it in order for it to run correctly.
There was an interview Joe Rogan was doing with one of the doctors that do some of the medical stuff, I think primarily with the UFC for that one. But they were talking about the fact that for a lot of guys, at least, the weight cutting process is the more dangerous and sometimes the hardest portion of the entire fight process. Would you say that's true in some sense?
Absolutely, 100,
Mhm.
1,000%. That is the fight. Some are more. I would say some are more, comfortable with it, different weights to cut, but when you have to cut a substantial amount of weight in a certain amount of time, it's like it's dangerous, you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
dangerous.
If you were to be able to guide us behind the rules, and obviously we know there's been a lot of debate, should the weigh-ins overall be something that you just have to weigh in the day of the fight, so that obviously make everybody different weight classes? Would you be in favor of that if everybody in the world had to fight what their natural body weight is, or do you feel like this is a part of boxing and should stay for the long term?
No, everything comes with rules. There are weight classes for a reason. It's like me fighting Zane. I mean, that's not fair. You know what I mean? It's not fair, but it gives order to the sport. You know what
Right.
I mean? It gives order.
Now, I was more so referring to the sense of would you like prefer if you fight your natural body weight? So everybody that would be whatever you walk around as who would be who you fight. Would that be something you'd like to see implemented, or do you feel like overall the weight cutting process should stay in place?
No, I feel like the weight cut process is still in place.
Okay.
The normal body weight, like the walk around body weight, like you said, that's people when they're not even at their best. You know what I mean? That's
Good
just
point.
the okay, cool, but they're not in shape. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? The fights wouldn't last 10 or 12 rounds.
Good point.
Guys
All
would
right.
be gassing out the fifth round.
Absolutely, man. Well, obviously, we already discussed your most recent fight. And so I have to ask you now. You're out of position. You're back in the win column, 10-1-1 record. Currently, you're ranked number 20 by the WBC. What's next for you? When can we possibly see you back in the ring?
We're working on it now. Working on who we want, what belts we want to snatch. And yeah, we just as a team, we just trying to come up with a the best route.
Okay. So, what is your game plan? If I were to say, the next year, year and a half for yourself, that would put you right about going into 2027. What would you want to accomplish in that standpoint? How many fights? Where do you see yourself heading into 2027? Like, just give us the kind of the game plan that you have estimated for yourself
Twenty
over the
going
next
into
year and a
twenty
half.
twenty seven. Honestly, I want to be making defenses.
Mhm.
I want to already become a world champ. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Or if that's too much to ask, I want to be at least fighting for it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Around that time.
When you know the game plan, would you say a world championship fight is that possible for? Obviously, this year's probably not going to happen, but would you say 2025 or 2026 is that possible for yourself next year happening?
Say that again.
Yeah, yeah. Would you think that 2026 is that a realistic possibility and a goal for yourself to go out there and fight for a world championship by 2026?
I believe it is. If I can fight the right people and get the right outcomes, I believe that I can speed the process up.
Okay. Is there something that you would want to fight then? Is there something when you look at all the different guys, rank maybe in the WBC, whatever ranking group it is there somebody that you would look at and say, that's a guy I want to fight next, or at least within the next 6, 7 months?
Yes, there are. I can't say any name, but I definitely there's a few guys that I want, but
Hmm.
I'm not allowed to say it at the moment.
All right. Are one of whoever those guys are in your mind, then are those possibly guys that we could see you fight then in the next fight?
uh, yes, yes.
Okay. I love that, man. Well, a couple of things before I let you go, Khalil. One of which is that you do go by the nickname Big Stepper. I have to know where that nickname come from. How'd you get that?
It just comes from the way I walk. I walk like everybody said. I walk on my toes.
Okay.
Take big steps. So that was just a
Well, I have to know, how did that start then originally? Did somebody say that about you and you just had to roll with that? Or how'd that actually come to be where
yeah.
you made that?
Somebody actually said it to me, and I was like, I kind of like that. I kind of
Okay.
like that, and I think I might stick with that for my boxing. It was either that or what do they say, calico,
Okay.
Khalil
Gotcha.
calico, like that. But I just
All
stuck
right.
with me, stuck.
I love it, man. Well, Khalil, I got one final question for yourself. It's the question like wrapping up every single interview with is talking about your legacy. Obviously, one day in the future, you're going to step away from boxing. And when that day does happen, what do you want to be remembered for what you've accomplished both inside and outside of that ring?
I want to be known for being one of the most exciting fighters. Fighting everyone.
Mm.
Nah, we not cherry picking. You can look at my record. I don't fight. I fought everybody I fought. I fought someone with 20-0. You know, but I'm building. I'm not ducking no smoke. I want all the smoke and I want all the belts.
All right. I love that, Khalil. Khalil, congratulations on your big fight again, once again, man, a couple weeks ago. And I cannot wait to see what God's got in store for you, man. Of
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.
course, you're always welcome on, man. God bless.
Thank you.